we just talked about preparing courses, and obviously, again, there are way more topics under that umbrella than what we covered. Now we're going to dip our toes into preparing students for flexibility. So we need to identify a few needs that the students might have. We need to figure out some strategies to prepare students for successful participation in flexible course experiences. They're going to be making choices in some cases, and in other cases, they are not. Here's an example. For those of you that are on a campus that's considering hybrid flexible courses as a strategy, then students may have an element of choice for when they come to class, when they participate via video conference, and when they participate on their own time. In other cases, I think it's University of Arizona is doing a cohort model where students, in order to reduce the density on campus and keep the number of students to a minimum in the classroom, the students are broke into two groups, A and B, and the A students get to join the class in person on Tuesdays, and the B are online, and then they flip on Thursday. So this cohort model is a way that some campuses are directing how the campus is reacting to safety and other potential concerns. So we have to work around the parameters that we're given and also identify ways that we can help students make choices when they have them. And then lastly, providing resources, which 75% of you said you're already doing in spades, which we love, but making sure that we're doing that not just in our syllabus, but throughout our course experience. Are we linking to materials and tutorials that will help students in the instructions for a given assignment, for example? That's one way we can think about expanding something that may already be a strength area to be an even further strength area. So I've pulled up just 3 potential challenges, and there are plenty more. And in the scripts that I wrote for the people who are going through this asynchronously, I referenced the fact that in the late 1800s, there's a science fiction author named Jules Verne who predicted the automobile 25 years before it was built. And what's even more amazing is he predicted traffic jams as a result of having cars. And so why do I bring this up? It's because we need to be aware of the potential challenges that flexibility are going to raise for our students, right? So if we give them more choices, we have to give them support in making strong choices. And even if we don't give them choices, we have to help them manage different modalities, whether it be physical versus virtual, real time versus on your own time, however you look at it. So 3 possible challenges might be that students may have a hard time participating. They may not be as active when they see a reduced number of students online, or not many people in the classroom. In some cases, in focus groups I've done with students say that they are not willing to speak up because they don't want to look foolish in front of their classmates. And so one aspect of flexibility is just making sure students know they have permission to fail. It's a space that's safe for them to try new ideas and work with their fellow students to come up with the right answers, or at least good answers. Agile learning. We have a great number of students who may be first-generation students, returning students, and a large number of any demographic that you pick that might be not as adept with technology as we might want. And so in flexible learning environments, we often lean on technology to help us through certain situations. We have Zoom running while we're in the classroom and all these different things. And if we do a breakout room where we ask students to jump into Google Docs, imagine being on your phone trying to participate in a Zoom breakout room and trying to go back and forth between the Zoom app and the Google Docs app in a 5 to 10 minute period when you know you're supposed to come up with some sort of deliverable and the pressure's mounting. I pretty sure that a certain number of students would just drop off the call because it's too much. We're adding to their cognitive load. So how do we support students who might need practice with the different switching between technologies or switching between different modalities and so on? And I just referenced in that example, the other issue that may emerge is mobile learning. We know, at least by the surveys that came out during the pandemic, that 20 to 25% of students don't have regular, steady access to a device other than a smartphone. So that means they may be participating in our classes on the go. And in some cases, they may be doing so from their car, parked by a Starbucks or a McDonald's in order to get a strong internet connection. And so we have to think about and practice ourselves submitting our work, completing our activities via a smartphone to make sure that it's something that students are able to do as well. So how do we help students prepare for this flexibility? Well, one is to let students know up front, and it should be in the course syllabus, but it might even be in the class schedule or class catalog in your campus. What are the flexibility strategies that you're going to use in order to support students in your class? Then creating assignments that foster responsibility. In my own class, I ask students to create a weekly calendar because for my class, which is a fully online class, it's not any sort of flexible yet, they often forget to allot time in their schedule for the class meetings, for the homework. And so they're supposed to dedicate somewhere between 5 and 6 hours a week to an online course at a minimum. And if they only dedicate 1 hour at midnight on Friday, then they're not going to get everything done. They're not going to retain anything. And so we need to create strategies that foster that sense of responsibility. In addition to calendars, I also use an online to-do list app that students can take my template and they can get automatic reminders when not only when things are due, but when they should start and when the milestones should be completed. So that way they're, again, not waiting until a reminder tells them that something's due at 10 p.m. today, but they have already started it on Monday, finished it on Wednesday, and turned in the final draft on Friday. We also want to provide resources to help students prepare. And so it's a question of what type of course you're teaching. And throughout this institute, we're going to keep coming back to the concept of resources. It might be a tutorial, it might be a handout, it might be a unit on your campus that can help students with some questions that they have. And we also want to give them opportunities to practice. We wonder sometimes why students don't engage in these deep, heavy conversations in our online discussions. It's often because that's the first time they're asked to perform in a discussion in our classes. So starting with a lightweight discussion so that they get used to the expectations of how they should be responding to their peers, using prompts that go beyond reply to 2 other students, instead giving them something that they're supposed to achieve with those replies, thinking about what those flexibility factors will play in terms of allowing students to interact across time and space. I feel like I talk about Star Trek when I talk about flexible course experiences, because we are dealing with people in different times and different places a lot of the time. And last, in module 3, we're going to talk about engagement more, and there'll be plenty of strategies that we can bring to bear to support students and have them support each other. But I would say that's one place to start when we're helping students prepare for flexibility, is to encourage peer support, whether it's building it right into assignments with a peer review process, or creating a sign up for study buddies, or what they call remote buddies, again, which we'll talk about in future modules. So for this particular micro lesson, we're going to engage in a collective brainstorming. So I'm going to stop sharing this particular slide, and I'm going to share the Google. Which I'm putting in the chat now. So here we have a Google spreadsheet, and it lists some of the challenges that I just talked about: active learning, agile learning, mobile learning. And this is our chance. This group, I have to say, I was a little bit nervous getting started today because you all know a lot of this stuff already. I'm not giving you brand new ideas. I'm maybe giving you brand new ways to think about some of these things. But the power behind having all of you in this room right now is together we can assemble a really good list of resources, tutorials, and types of support units that our faculty members can share with their students to help with flexibility in a class. So what do I mean by this? Earlier, I talked about students maybe having a hard time switching from one tool to another. So Arizona State has a great article, Zoom Tips and Tricks for College Students. And so does the website Basic Computer Tips. They've got Zoom tips for college students, which emphasizes the importance of participation. If we're thinking about agile learning and people who may not be adept at managing multiple windows, there's a pretty good YouTube video out there where a guy is managing multiple windows and he's got his cat in one of them for students who may need something to attract their attention. Also, we talked about the concept of having students helping students. Cal State system has a page that lists student peer mentor programs on a number of campuses. So if you're not familiar with any peer mentor programs on your campus, check out and see if they are going to be supporting anything related to flexible learning or helping students with the modality. When it comes to mobile learning, I found a brilliant video in the tutorial column, how to use the Zoom mobile app on your phone in 2021. It talks about a bunch of different factors, how you can only see 4 faces on the screen instead of 25, the limitations and the benefits. And again, supporting that up to a quarter of students who may be learning on their mobile device instead of a laptop or a computer. I also included a resource for teachers that gives us as instructors some advice and guidance about how to support remote learners who are using their smartphones. Again, I know it's not the main thrust of this institute, but we do need to keep equity in mind, and access is one of the factors that comes up the most often when people start talking about equity. Later on, they jump into topics like bias or meaningful connections to the content and connection and belonging with their fellow students and the discipline. But I've said enough. Do people have any questions about our collective goal, which is to generate some ideas of resources we can share with students to help them prepare for a flexible course experience? And you're welcome to use voice or the chat. Yes, Janae, please add ideas. And even if you can think of a challenge but can't think of any resources for it, put it down so that somebody else can fill it in. We're not going to stop today. We're just starting the ball rolling. And we'll give you, let's say, 5 minutes just to type in as many ideas as you can. This is a collective brainstorming activity. There's no right or wrong answers.
Kevin, this is Leslie. I imagine that students will need to know, just maybe walking through the scenarios of whether they come to the classroom or they're at home. how that could be different, how they can ask questions, you know, kind of maneuvering the environment as well. Not just the technology, but how do they communicate? You know, maybe have some practice, the beginning of class, the first day, a practice session where you just kind of spend time maybe with some silly things, just to kind of get them comfortable and associating themselves in that place.
No, that's absolutely a good idea. And we'll come back to some of those when we talk about in module 4, managing a lecture experience, or what I call an interactive lecture experience, or in module 3, when we talk about managing activities that ask students to interact with one another. But I think when we are here in module 1, thinking about how we're designing the course period, absolutely, we need to be thinking about what are the aspects of flexibility that they will not be accustomed to. For example, Alex Hazelwood just brings up, how about working around students' schedules? So Alex, in module 2 on Thursday, we're going to talk about how do we change our due dates? How do we change the amount of time that things are available so that students can work ahead if they know they have a busy time coming up in their personal lives, and can catch up if that happens to them by surprise. Somebody has to have an emergency surgery, they have to miss a class or two, how do they catch up? Somebody knows that someone's going on a trip to see an ill relative, then they can read ahead and complete some activities in advance. So as we think about structuring our course, the class schedule is one aspect of that.
Please press 2 for questions about order tracking and shipping information.
Please hold while we find an available support agent to assist you. Your calls may be recorded for monitoring purposes.
I'm going to ask that whoever's off mute, maybe go back on mute unless you want to chime in. So Orlando asked a good question. How do we make our courses more flexible without watering down the outcomes? So I don't think creating equivalent pathways for students to reach our existing outcomes means watering them down. I think it means making sure that everybody has the fewest barriers possible so that they can achieve them. And so if time becomes a barrier because they're working asynchronously, how can they achieve the same goals as the students who are doing an activity in person? If space is a barrier, they're not able to do something in person, in what way can they do that at a different location? And it doesn't necessarily have to be at their house. It could be at a satellite location. My wife is a horticulturist, and so it could be an opportunity for students to go to a local nursery in a safe outdoor setting to do some of the same activities that students at a horticulture class might perform in a nursery on a campus. So it is a good question, and I think it requires us to think through, do our outcomes work for before? Will they still work for now and the future? And how do we make sure that students going through different modalities can achieve them? I do think, Orlando, that there are greater challenges for some of the hands-on activities that we see in career and technical education fields, like welding, healthcare, like nursing, and others that have an in-person component, and STEM, where they may be using lab kits instead of working in a lab, or what they may be doing, using that cohort model that I described earlier. They might, in order to reduce the density of students in a campus lab, maybe asking students to sign up for time slots when only 5 students can work in a particular chemistry or physics lab at a given time. And so we have to think through the physical plant ramifications of some of the things that we're trying, and make sure that we're not doing what Orlando raised, that we're not watering something down, that we're not preparing students for a future where they don't have the skills they need to succeed in subsequent classes or in the discipline. Natalie says, I have used Slack for group work and activities. Some have really loved using it and some have felt it was too confusing. Well, I can say I have created or at least asked the Chancellor's office to help me create a Slack space for this institute, specifically because it allows for interactions over time that seem a little bit more authentic than, hey, we're going to have students in real time use the discussion forum, and then so will the people who are learning on their own time. Or, hey, we're going to scrape this chat and we're going to paste it somewhere so that the students who are learning on their own can read all the text from the chat, so that they don't feel like they missed out. Using channels that support multiple modalities means that we as teachers don't have to focus in our attention in multiple places at the same time, but also does add to the complexity. If we add Slack, that means it's possibly a second tool that we're using in real time. It could be used for a back channel, sure, but it also brings up that issue that we have on this very spreadsheet, that students may need to have help navigating different windows when things are happening simultaneously. Mark Lim says the university has Teams, which is similar to Slack, and that seems to be a useful tool for after a learning curve. Yes, so giving opportunities for practice, as some people have said, and students create their own Discord channels, which are private and may have integrity issues. I don't know, like Sean, what the integrity issues might be, unless you're thinking that it's academic integrity issues where students may be sharing work that they've unearthed. Maybe somebody takes the quiz and then shares it on the Discord channel. There are ways around those types of things. And Janae makes a good point. It might have to do more with account privacy. And obviously you want students to know the different issues related to using any technology that's not supported by the campus. Barbara brings up not only privacy, but accessibility of any tools that are being used. William Hardaway talks about using tools like Miro, and Figma Jam for live collaboration. So I love it. You guys are sharing some great tools, and I hope you'll bring these back when we talk about engagement. All right, one more minute, and then we will move on to the third and last micro lesson of the day. Janae with her DAT cap says Discord is not typically a university supported tool, so students may sign up with accounts that are not linked to the university single sign-on, which could compromise PII, or personal identification information. Good point by Barbara, reminding students not to use their university password anywhere with their campus account. Well, luckily my password is, oh, I almost gave it to you guys. Lalita, I think your hand is up. I can't see the videos, but someone has just shared that with me. So please jump in.
I had a question about engineering because we need to draw and sketch a lot of things. And that's a part of one of the outcomes that students would be able to interpret the worded problem and sketch it out. Now, when I do that, sometimes I have used Zoom. There is a Zoom whiteboard. So, and it allows even students to draw on that, not only me. So I have done that. The other thing I wanted to share is I allowed students to just sketch it up on their paper and just take a photograph and share it with me. So that's another way of doing it. I'm just thinking what could be other ways of engaging students.
So those are both great ideas, and I love the flexibility you've built in right there, that if students don't have a device that allows them to use a mouse or something like that, that they can do it on pen and paper and take a picture. Again, that supports students who are only using a smartphone, may have low bandwidth capabilities. There may be other tools out there. I know there are concept mapping tools that can also be used to show flow diagrams that are used for engineering, and they even have symbol sets for engineering diagrams. So you might look into some of those. And then I'll see, we have the brain trust here of 72 other minds who may have some ideas about how to help engineering students stay engaged. And remember, next Tuesday, we are going to have an entire module, 90 minutes devoted to engagement in flexible course settings. Today, we're primarily focusing on the design of the course, but we'll get there for sure.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You bet. All right. Well, I see that we've added a couple dozen rows, and again, we're not going to stop today. We'll continue adding to this sheet. So thank you so much, everyone, for sharing your great ideas. Megan brings up Google Jamboard, and I know some people like that, and some people like the tools like William Hardaway brought up. Mural and Miro have these infinite sheets compared to Jamboard, which has a limited amount of space. So once students get drawing quite a bit, they run out of place to put their ideas. And so you want to test it out in advance before you do that, or make sure that every student has their own Jamboard or every small group, so that it doesn't become hard for students to focus on the task at hand. Janae brings up PowerPoint slides as a way for students to leave comments. And I've seen some really creative things right in Zoom where students use the annotate features. When you use your PowerPoint slides as a teacher, you ask students to annotate, you know, here's a spectrum. Do you fall on the, I like vanilla ice cream, or I like strawberry ice cream part of the spectrum? And if you like them both, you put your X in the middle. And so there are all kinds of ways to do that. Faith will get to perusals and other annotation tools in module 4. So you all are looking like you know what you're talking about. Let's jump to the next and final micro lesson.